Tonight, we travel softly to a city beside a wide and ancient river, a city of pale stone corridors, quiet gardens, and lamps that glow like small golden moons. Its name was Hastinapur, and in its palace lived a young prince named Devavrata. Much later, the world would know him by another name, but tonight we will meet him before that name was given, when he was still simply a son who loved to see his father smile. King Shantanu's smile was easy for Devrat to recognize. He had seen it in the great hall when musicians played. He had seen it beside the river when the evening wind cooled the banks. He had seen it whenever Devrat returned from his lessons and the king tried, unsuccessfully, to hide how proud he was. Devrat knew the sound of his father's footsteps. He knew the warmth of his laughter. And he knew the particular brightness that entered the king's eyes whenever he spoke together. That was why, one evening, Devrat noticed something that others had missed. The palace was not silent. Servants still crossed the marble floors. Oil lamps flickered beside the carved pillars. Somewhere in a distant courtyard, water continued falling into a stone pool. Yet something within the palace had grown quiet. King Shantanu no longer joined the evening conversations. His meals returned almost untouched. When ministers spoke, he sometimes seemed to be listening to a voice much further away. And often, as the sky turned gold beyond the palace arches, he stood alone, looking toward the river. One evening, Devrat approached his father's chamber. The door stood open. Beyond them, the king was standing on his private balcony. The wind moved gently through the curtains. Shantanu heard his son's footsteps and turned. He smiled. It was the same familiar smile, warm, tender, reassuring. But the smile did not reach his eyes. Devrat stopped at the doorway. He did not know the reason. He only knew that something was there. For several days, Devrat watched without pressing his father for an answer. He noticed how the king's gaze returned again and again to the river. He noticed the unfinished words, the long pauses, the way Shantanu would begin to smile and then remember something. At last, Devrat went to an elder of the court who had served the king for many years. "Has something happened to my father?" he asked. The elder hesitated. Then he told the prince what the king himself had been unable to say. Some days earlier, beside the river Yamuna, King Shantanu had met a young woman named Satyavati. She guided boats across the river and lived with her father, the chief of the fishing community. Shantanu wished to marry her, but Satyavati's father had placed one condition before him. A son born to Satyavati must one day inherit the throne of Hastinapur. Shantanu had already named Devrat as his heir. The king would not break his word to his son, nor would he ask his son to surrender what had already been promised to him. And so, Shantanu had returned to the palace alone, carrying a wish he believed could not be fulfilled. The elder finished speaking. Devvrat remained still for a moment. Then he looked towards the river. The following morning, Devvrat left the palace with several trusted elders. The city gates opened before them. The pale towers of Hastinapur slowly disappeared behind the trees. They followed the river until the royal roads became narrow paths, and the path led to the home of Satyavati's father. The fisherman chief welcomed the prince with respect. Devvrat explained why he had come. He asked that Satyavati be allowed to marry King Shantanu. The chief repeated the condition he had given the king. Only a son born to Satyavati could inherit the throne. Devvrat answered without anger, "Then I shall not be king. I give up my claim to the throne of Hastinapur. A son born to Satyavati shall inherit it." The elders who had travelled with him looked at one another. The fisherman bowed his head, but he was not yet at peace. "Prince," he said carefully, "I do not doubt your word, but one day you may have children of your own. What will happen then? Will they not ask why the throne was given to another?" The river moved beside them. A bird called from the reeds. The wind caught the edge of Devvrat's royal cloth and lifted it behind him. For a few moments, he said nothing. The question was no longer about the throne alone. It was about years that had not yet arrived, children not yet born, a future no one standing there could completely see. Devvrat looked at the river again. Then he turned back to the fisherman chief. His voice was calm. "I shall never marry. I shall have no children. No descendant of mine will ever challenge the children of Satyavati. I give my word before the river, before the sky, and before all who stand here." The wind fell still. Even the people gathered along the river seemed to forget to breathe. It was a promise so difficult, so far reaching, that those who heard it knew Devvrat's life had changed in the moment he spoke. Flowers drifted down through the open sky, and from above came a name the world would remember: Bhishma. Bhishma, the one who had taken the terrible vow. Not terrible because it was cruelly spoken, but because it would carry a weight far beyond that morning, into the lives and years that none of them could yet understand. Devvrat returned towards Hastinapur with Satyavati. When King Shantanu learned what his son had done, many feelings moved through him at once: joy, love, wonder, and a sorrow different from the one Devvrat had first noticed. The king placed his hands upon his son's shoulders. For a time, neither of them spoke. Outside, the palace lamps were being lit. The river continued beneath the evening sky, and the young prince, who had left Hastinapur as Devvrat, returned carrying the name Bhishma. History would remember the vow, kings would speak of it, warriors would honor it, generations would remember the name Bhishma. But perhaps there's another moment worth remembering, a quieter one. A young prince standing at an open doorway, noticing his father's smile had not reached his eyes. Before the journey, before the promise, before the sky spoke his new name, there was simply a person who looked carefully at someone he loved. Tonight, as the lamps of Hastinapur grow dim, You do not need to remember or decide what the story means. You may let it rest beside you, like the sound of a river in the distance, like a curtain moving gently in the evening air. Have you ever noticed that someone you loved was quieter than usual? You need not answer tonight. The question can wait, and so can the river, and so can the stars. Sleep softly. The palace lamps will keep watch.